Julie and her night order arrived at the scene not far from the fourth stop, less than an hour's journey from Bercht. A security department officer briefed them, his breath misting in the cold air. He explained that during the first attack, Professor Deculain had secured the train and rescued survivors alongside Sir Veron. However, in the second assault, the entire carriage had gone over the cliff, taking Sir Veron with it. Only the VIP carriage, where Professor Deculain had been, remained intact. Julie acknowledged his report, and the officer then showed them a copy of Rowan's photograph. He mentioned that the area was so remote that the only eyewitnesses were those directly involved and asked if they had seen the article. Julie confirmed that she had, including the image of Deculain sitting calmly inside the suspended train. The officer revealed that not all photos had been released, producing another image, this one depicting the corpses of the knights who had attacked the train. He speculated that the head professor might have subdued them, remarking that Deculain was practically a one-man army. When the knights remained silent, the officer quickly composed himself and reiterated that, based on the evidence, it appeared Deculain and Veron had tried to handle the situation, and Veron had met with misfortune during the second attack. Julie thanked him before turning away, her gaze sweeping across the desolate snow-covered landscape. The world around her was an endless expanse of white, the silence so deep it seemed to hum in her ears. Though she had believed herself hardened to loss, her thoughts kept returning to Veron, his life cut short, his relentless determination to rise from nothing, his dreams extinguished here. One of her knights asked if Veron had left anything behind. The officer admitted there was nothing. When another inquired about the attackers, the officer stated that, officially, no one would be held accountable. Incidents on the journey to Berchtesgaden were often overlooked, and with Veron as the only casualty, the higher-ups wouldn't authorize an investigation. Julie stepped forward, her boots crunching in the snow, until she stood at the cliff's edge. The wind cut through her, carrying the scent of ice and pine. Below, the ravine stretched into obscurity, its depths hidden by shifting fog. Somewhere in that abyss lay her comrade. She murmured to herself that he had lived diligently and died as an escort. Tears welled in her eyes as the snow continued to fall, then whispered, "Fool?" The mansion doors had barely closed behind Deculain when Yariel's furious voice cut through the air like a whip. She stormed toward him, her heels striking the marble floor sharply. The butler followed anxiously, his usual composure visibly strained. Yariel accused Deculain of writing another family check, demanding to know if he had forgotten her warnings. She shouted that their finances couldn't sustain such spending and that they wouldn't last 2 more months at this rate, calling him an idiot. Deculain's expression darkened as he realized the wand's commission had exceeded projections. Issuing checks had been a miscalculation, but the dire state of Yukline's finances surprised even him. Cutting through her outburst with cold precision, he told her to calm herself and assured her he had a way to secure more funds. Yariel, still seething, demanded to know what he meant. Deculain led them to the auction items, arranged meticulously in rows, their gilded surfaces gleaming faintly. Yariel scoffed, accusing him of admiring his purchases she believed were nothing but displays of ego. He warned her to be quiet and reminded her that she was the next head of the family, which only fueled her anger further. She retorted that he had no right to lecture her while draining their funds, her voice rising in frustration as the butler attempted to intervene. Ignoring her, Deculain focused on the items before him. He had initially dismissed them as mere vanity investments, but while preparing to return to Bercht, he had realized their true potential. His hand hovered over an ornate vase as he activated Midas Touch, a pulse of golden light rippling across its surface. Yariel, exasperated, mocked him for standing there like a fool. The butler tried to soothe her, but Deculain ignored them both, instructing the butler to summon an appraiser immediately and prepare the items for auction. Yariel paled, protesting that antiques needed time to appreciate in value, and that selling them now would mean losing half of what they had paid. Deculain silenced her with a firm command before turning back to the vase, now transformed. Vase of the Eastern Master Craftsman. Description: a vessel forged with the essence of its creator's soul. Midas Touch has awakened its latent potential. Effects: flowers placed within never wilt. Petals regenerate, imbued with mid to high class fatigue recovery. What was once worth 2.5 million elna was now priceless. As workers carefully lifted the vase, Deculain warned them to handle it with care. Yariel, now more anxious than angry, demanded to know if he was truly selling everything, if this was his way of ruining them completely. He met her gaze calmly, assuring her they would profit, declaring he had lost his mind, then shouted in disbelief when he dismissed her concerns. Deculain checked the time and announced he had to leave for work. Yariel let out a scream of pure frustration as the door clicked shut behind him. 5 students sat around a table, cards in hand, the atmosphere thick with nervous excitement as cards slapped against wood. Ephraim triumphantly declared she had a full house, kings high, fanning her winning hand across the table. A collective groan rose from her opponents, with one student lamenting that this was her 3rd consecutive win, while another protested they'd been just 1 card away from a flush. Leaning back with satisfaction, Ephraim announced that as champion, she was officially waiving a week's cleaning duty. Her grin widened at their groans. When one defeated student started making excuses about how close they'd been, Ephraim cut them off, declaring that excuses were for losers. The group erupted in laughter. It felt like a dream, she marveled inwardly. She was just a baron's daughter who had never even attended the academy. Since entering the tower, she'd been despised by students and professors alike, enduring so many incidents. Yet now, she was in a club with friends. Her smile softened as she admitted she was really liking this ordinary magic exploration. The red-haired girl quickly corrected her in a hushed tone. They were supposed to be the Ordinary Magic Discussion Club, and reminded her to keep up appearances. Ephraim winced and apologized. Crash. The door shuddered on its hinges as Professor Reeland's bulk filled the doorway, his jowls quivering with outrage. He demanded to know what was going on. Behind him loomed Beck. Beck sneered that he had warned the professor. These commoners were cluttering the tower with their pointless activities, his voice dripping with faux concern. Of course, Ephraim thought bitterly. Reeland and Beck, they turned everything about commoners into an issue. Reeland squinted at their makeshift plaque, OMDC. In the novel, it was CMRC, Common Magic Research Club, crudely carved into wood, and barked at them again to explain themselves. Ephraim closed her eyes briefly. It was unwelcome, but expected. She needed to handle this honorably. Calmly, she stated that they had submitted a formal club proposal and received approval. They were an official club. Reeland spat in disbelief, demanding to know who had authorized such a farce. Then his finger jabbed toward her as a recognition dawned. She was that lowlife who had been disciplined before. He accused her of being behind this again. Ephraim stiffened. Again. Lowlife. Again. Her gaze sharpened, locking onto Reeland's face. Noticing her defiance, Reeland laughed mockingly and ordered her to lower her eyes. The red-haired girl tugged at Ephraim's sleeve in warning. Beck chuckled, clearly enjoying the scene. Reeland smirked and challenged her. If she was so confident, she should name the professor who had approved this. No upstanding faculty member would permit such nonsense, he sneered. A shadow fell across the doorway. Epiphany's breath caught. Seeing her stunned expression, Reeland shouted triumphantly. He knew it. No professor would have allowed such a club to. It was me. Reeland froze at the voice. His smirk died mid-breath as he slowly, painfully turned. Deculain stood there, his glare like a blade. The air itself seemed to thicken under his presence, settling on Reeland with the weight of a guillotine. In a lethally calm voice, Deculain stated that he had permitted it and asked if Professor Reeland had any complaints. Ephraim could only stare, stunned.